There's coffee in that nebula.
How you doing, fellas?
Okay.
That's no decaf, is it?
Viennese cinnamon.
Viennese cinnamon. Yummy. Morning, guys.
Good morning.
I'm enjoying my fuel up. UFO Wednesdays fuel up sponsorship is through fuelup.gg/UFO Gerry. I don't know why they put my name on it. It was weird. But Don is here. Are you drinking fuel up or coffee? Coffee. Cafe.
That's my supersized French press.
French press, hell yeah. You know, half the reason why Anima likes you is because you got French press.
Yeah. So, today is another screwed up day in the United States of America. And the big question, did you read the partial paper I sent you?
Yes, I did. In fact,
Okay.
I ended up reading it twice.
Okay.
Now
Now
I
it's
was like,
not
no
done.
way he ended up right there.
It's
You
it's
end
not.
on like the precipice of the opening of what you're going to talk about, and then I'm like, no way, that's not the ending. I went back and I'm like, oh, it is. That was the ending. That's all we got.
Yeah, well, I told you it was not yet done.
I know.
First off, before we even discuss it, what was your response to what I've laid out?
Well, if I had it in front of me, I'd be able to cue it. I didn't know there was going to be a quiz. Jesus Christ, I would have crammed harder. No, there's a point where you started opening up, like it's one of those moments where you started bringing up more people and what they know, and it's sort of like because I went down the same rabbit hole with the whole extortion 17 thing yesterday too.
Mm-hmm.
So between that and Extortion 17, I was basically loaded up with just way too much information for me to regurgitate properly. But I'm going to tell you that Anima, she was with me. We went through it together. And she was like, holy crap. I went, yeah, I know. But you're setting up something here with how much has been known and for how long. And you brought up the Harry Reid equation in the middle of it. And I wanted to know where that was going to go because I know it sounds awful as a human being, but I don't trust Democrats. I really don't, not today in particular. And Harry Reid is one of those pieces of shit that I never liked. And to find out that he is at the front of a lot of the shit with ATAP and all of that stuff, I'm like, what is going on? And so you started opening up on that in what you wrote.
Well,
because it was 9 pages that you wrote so far.
Right. Okay. Now, there is no doubt in my military mind, and probably anybody that has paid attention, that they are more involved in sitting on their ass on a couch, eating potato chips, and watching the latest garbage out of Hollywood, okay?
You need to stop watching me at night, dude, because that's all I do.
Well, no, but Washington, D.C. is a swamp.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It's a deep, dark swamp. The tendrils of power continuously transpire through walls of money. You know, my late dear and very sorely missed departed friend, Rich Saraday, often said that things will never change until money is taken out of politics. Well, that's never going to happen. Okay. Just quite simply, it's not going to happen. The money, the power, the influence are so pervasive that, the bottom line is buckle up, Buttercup, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. Well, Harry Reid was one of the most influential and powerful Democratic senators in the United States Senate. He was as corrupt as the day is long, okay, especially now that we're heading toward the summertime when days are long. Now, Harry was involved in a lot of land transactions in the state of Nevada. And Nevada is a very strange, weird state, okay? Unlike many other states, it is primarily controlled by the federal government because of all the military activity and the top secret intelligence activities like Area 51, S4, all that stuff. Okay, the federal tendrils go deep. Well, Harry was in the middle of all that power, was in the middle and in many ways coordinated it. Now, one of his big buddies was, and he's still here today, is Robert Bigelow. Okay, Bigelow Aerospace, all right, a huge up-and-comer, deep ties to the military-industrial complex, and the information that I received when I was, number one, working on the paper that you just read, not the whole paper, it's not done yet, but you got a gist of where I'm heading with it. And the whole ATIP program, okay, which the History Channel ran a series of episodes, supposedly of some movers and shakers within the federal government, advanced avionics, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the DOD. It was called, the series was called Unidentified.
Oh, yeah,
And
that show.
basically, what they were doing was beating a drum for UFO reality, although they changed the acronym. No longer UFO. Today, the accepted acronym is UAP. A rose is a rose is a rose, okay? Same thing, different acronym. It used to be before UFO, which was an Air Force acronym, a flying saucer or a flying disc. But the government had to put another spin on it, I guess, to make it more acceptable to many. And ergo, we continue on. Well, Reid came out in December of 2017 with a press conference basically stating that he and two of his colleagues, Senate associates, basically went out and found a bit over $20 million to fund this new program in the Pentagon, ATIP, okay, to basically find out what this aerial phenomena is flying around. Now, on the basis of it. And I guess you could say, in a number of regards, I am a historian, a military historian, and when it comes to the UFO topic, I've been involved in that now for over 35 years professionally. And I guess you could say I'm somewhat of a UFO historian. So I looked at that remark and I thought to myself, and I may have even publicly stated it, what a load of bullshit. The government, okay, since day one, back in 1947, and there's a hell of a lot of evidence to suggest perhaps well before 47, knew that they were dealing with a technologically advanced something, all right? Now, Roswell, if in fact a strange, unidentified craft of some type crashed there, okay, they knew damned well from the get-go that that thing was not manufactured in Detroit, all right? So they've been covering it up. We know that. We have, my God, tons of information proving that they've been covering this up forever, for bloody ever. Now, suddenly, the equation changed with Reed and with the discovery of the Nimitz battle group back in 2004, with the Tic Tac phenomenon, the Navy coming forward, the Navy basically going polar opposite to what the Air Force has been doing for 80 years, which is covering it up and never saying a peep about the program. Suddenly we have another branch of the military that's seemingly coming forward with truth for the American public. Well, that was a real nice fantasy, I guess you could say, a bit of an illusion. The government, in my opinion, and from the hundreds, if not thousands of people that I've interfaced with over the years, the fact that when my wife, Vicki, and I were publishing UFO magazine, we basically interfaced with everybody that was anybody in this field. We've dealt with the Pentagon. We've dealt with NASA. I personally butted heads with every known skeptic in the United States. And all of these people have been disingenuous to a fault. And if you're not familiar with the word disingenuous, that means those sons of bitches of liars everywhere, okay?
Yeah.
So the bottom line was, I looked at Harry Reid, I looked at that press conference, I looked at the UFO field explode into ecstasy. Oh my God, disclosure is coming, disclosure is coming. And the bottom line was, I knew these people were basically sitting in the corner playing with themselves. It's not going to come. Now, why? And what the hell was this dog and pony show that Harry Reid was putting on? Well, some of this I could go to court, I could take an oath, I could swear to tell the truth and only the truth, and I would be fine. Some of it is subjective, and my own personal feelings about the matter, although with all those years of research behind me. But here's the bottom line as I see it, okay? This is the bottom line as Don Eckert sees it. Number one, nobody is going to come forward from the federal government and disclose anything. Why? Well, number of reasons. First reason being, for 80 years, the United States government, the military establishment, the intelligence establishment have gone out of their way to keep this under lock and key. Obviously, they haven't been totally successful because we're right here talking about it and have been forever. But the real keys to the crown jewels are still deeply buried. Number two, the military and the intelligence agencies have willy-nilly destroyed lives over this phenomena. Okay, people trying to come forward and discuss what they saw. People like airline pilots, people like military officers, military personnel, people like Joe Sixpack down the street that suddenly discovered the long arm of the federal government squashing them because they saw something they shouldn't. Now, that in itself should give you pause to think, okay, what's the big deal? Somebody sees something in the sky they can't identify. Okay, so what's the big deal? Or somebody sees one of these things come down to earth and land. Well, okay. But what's amazing about that other than the fact that it's something strange? Or somebody saw something where occupants came out. Or some of these strange oddities made incursions into extraordinarily sensitive areas like nuclear arsenals, ICBM bases, nuclear power plants. Or, if you remember back in the very early 90s, these things were flying all around NATO headquarters. Okay? Later, we found out with the collapse of the Soviet Union, and I had personal interface with former extremely high-placed Red Air Force officers, one of them Dr. Marina Popovich, that the same damn thing was happening all over the former Soviet Union. Okay. Then we get these little tidbits like back in the very early 60s, before President John F. Kennedy was murdered. Okay. The UFO topic suddenly blossomed at that time. And the rumors, and let me stress rumors, were stated that Kennedy was in favor of opening up a dialogue with Soviet leaders to basically discuss the UFO topic. You hear Bailey in the background.
Yeah. So, but Kennedy was wanting to talk with the Russians about this shit then.
Right. They wanted to basically, well, Kennedy originally, and I don't want to get too sidetracked, but Kennedy. Oh, we got somebody walking.
Drill sergeant yelled.
Bailey. Oh, I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
Don't
It
be.
gives us a chance to say good morning to everybody. Who's all here, Martin?
What?
Who's all here? Who's in our chat?
Oh, dude, almost everybody. I have a very compelling list in the private chat for
Yeah,
that.
I thought you would read it.
Oh no, please don't do. I don't want to butcher the names.
All right, let me get to the list here. I was hoping that you would save me, but no, you're not gonna. Not gonna.
I think
do
the
it.
secret government sidetracked us.
Yeah, that's what it is. Bailey has got wires and gets little signals from the government when they need you to
Well,
stop talking. Andy
Bush, it
Morrow
was
is here. Penny is here. Fish Belly. Anima Confusa, love of my life. Bush McFadden is here. Bush. Cavatino Cavalryman Che. John Ostains. Real Wade Nation. Alex Moore. Monkey Jubas. It's a house of monkeys today. And Slasher Fred are here. Good morning, guys. Hope everybody's doing good.
Okay, can I
Yes, I
continue
got
on?
that out of the way to help you out.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And let me once again apologize for my beagle. But anyway, to get back to President Kennedy, you got to remember, and if you weren't around then, it's going to be hard to imagine. But Kennedy, unlike today, was a hardcore, hardline American Democrat. But in many ways, he was much more liberal for that time period than many on the hard right were really comfortable with. And the fact that, regardless of what the topic was, that he wanted to open a dialogue with Soviet leaders was not viewed in a very favorable light. Okay. Now, of course, in November 63, he was assassinated. And we still don't know what the deal was on exactly why he was taken out. But a lot of people have made a lot of suppositions and theories on what the cause might have been. This particular thing of opening up a dialogue with the Russians was one of them. Now, you got to remember, this was in the aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the Russians were attempting to install nuclear weapons into Cuba under Russian control, under the Russian communist controls, not under Castro's. But in the event something happened which would precipitate World War III, they had the means, if those missiles would have been basically fully deployed, to wipe out half the United States from the East Coast going west. And that terrified everybody. And this was in the aftermath of an invasion of Cuba by freedom fighter Cubans who had basically bailed the hell out when Castro took over. They wanted to take it back. So it was a very, very precarious time. And a lot of people felt that Kennedy was too slow to basically react to what was happening. There was damn near a mutiny with the Joint Chiefs of Staff because he sat on this business of Russian missiles for over a week before he acted. The Joint Chiefs were going nuts. Okay. I don't know how many people are aware of that, but that's an absolute fact. So basically, he was forced into taking some serious action. Now, when he put the blockade up around Cuba and they were trying to turn back Soviet freighters that were believed to be bringing in more nuclear components, everybody was terrified the war was about to begin. In my own family, my old man was military. He had been basically activated, and they all thought they were going to Cuba. My old man was military. He had been basically. What the hell's that?
Sorry,
It was John.
I hit the wrong button.
Yes, you did, John. Go shave your beard, by God.
Hey, I already shaved enough of it.
Shave some more. So anyway, to get back to what we were originally talking about, disclosure. All this period of time, the Pentagon had been hanging on to their secrets about UFOs like a June bride. Now, as I began doing a lot of research, and Gerry will tell you from the partial document he read, some very uncomfortable rumors have begun circulating from some very insider people. And I'm talking about people that had been Central Intelligence Agency spooks and scientists. The suggestion, and this has been held tightly to breast, but the suggestion is that the true UFO disclosure secrets can never be released because, from my sources and the documents that I've read, something came to light early on, and we're talking probably late 40s, early 50s, that was discovered by our people that, quite frankly, scared them to the bottom of the soles of their feet, if this ever became public knowledge. Now, don't ask me what it was, I don't know. However, I can make some possible explanations. Huh?
I was thinking educated assumptions on things.
Right.
Because
one of them may have been discovering on board the Roswell craft that there might have been a human being that had been abducted. Something else that happened at that time, and this is something else that has not been widely disseminated, but after the Roswell crash, and I got this from a couple of the early Roswell researchers. One of them was Bill Moore. I don't know how tied in he was at the time, but a very unusual flu suddenly manifested itself in the aftermath of that crash. Now, whether there's any connection or not, I don't know. But I found it at the time interesting. But whatever it was, according to, and I will name names when the paper is done. I'm not going to name them now. But according to a couple of former intelligence scientists, that these military people were so freaked out by what they discovered that the decision was made that this can never, ever be broached because the effect on the public is too, or would be too traumatizing. Now, to go a little bit further, the bottom line is this, okay? This topic, UFO, UAP, is so highly classified, all right? So highly classified that it's protected by an SAP designation. Now, if you don't know what an SAP designation is, it means Special Access Program. Now, if you read the paper that I did on the Admiral Wilson document several years ago, Thomas Wilson, was at the time in the mid-1990s the director of DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and a number of people went to Wilson in the Pentagon, and he was in several unofficial meetings discussing the UFO program, or the UFO topic, I should say, with several academics and others. One of them was Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell, of course, the astronaut,
Yep.
walked on the moon, was the sixth human being to ever touch down on the moon. Okay. Later, he was most well known because he unofficially attempted several psychic tests while he was flying to and from the moon, became quite famous for that. Went to Wilson along with several others, including Dr. Stephen Greer, which is somebody I don't have a lot of respect for, but that's a different show. But the bottom line was Wilson agreed that he would try to follow up to find out what, if anything, he could discover. So he went back and he talked to some of his colleagues at the Joint Chiefs. Someone said, look, if you really want to know what may be behind this, he said, the people you've got to talk to are and I'm going to use an acronym I'm pulling out of the air, or some might say out of my ass, the ABC Aviation Corporation out on the West Coast. Well, one of those corporations out here had something called the Skunk Works. Now, if you know what the Skunk Works are, you probably have a good idea of who I'm talking about. But the bottom line was, these were the people that gave us the SR-71, the A-12, and a number of other ultra top secret aircraft at the time, the F-117, for example. And if anybody had any information on this, it might be those guys. Now, why would a civilian corporation have that stuff? Well, apparently, over the years, or I should say now, the decades, and if I wanted to be even more precise, damn near a century since this phenomena broke upon the world screen, the government has been flummoxed about what to do. Well, who best to examine this, utilize the technology, discover the technology, break down the technology than our frontline aviation corporations? So they are not susceptible to things like FOIA requests. Let's give it to these guys and make sure that it's tightly compartmentalized. So here is the director of the DIA, the military equivalent of the CIA. He calls these people up. They tell him, well, we can't discuss anything about anything with you unless you were to come out here, because the telephone lines, number one, are not secure. So he agreed to fly out there. He did. This is according to the document that was written by the guy, Eric Davis, that interviewed him. All right. In a parking lot in Las Vegas at a certain corporation's headquarters located in Las Vegas. Did an hour interview. Now, having been a criminal investigator myself, having met people in strange places, interviewing them, things that I've done, one thing I always had with me was a tape recorder. I am positive, ironclad positive, that Davis had one. because the notes and remarks that he ended up writing in that document were too precise. So he had to record what Wilson was telling him. I basically soused that when I read the document. I said, no, there's no way he went by memory with this. So in the document, Wilson told him that he flew out, met them. He was taken into a secure vault. The program security manager came in. Wilson told him what he wanted to know. And remember, this guy was an admiral. He was the director of DIA. The program security manager went over, pulled out a book that had all the people with access to the program, went into the book, couldn't find Wilson's name, and basically told him, sorry, you don't have a need to know. Well, Wilson was livid, totally, absolutely livid. He ended up going back to Washington, D.C., went back to D.C., ready to kick up a tempest, and somebody pulled him aside and said, you know, Admiral, he said, you don't have too long until retirement, do you? He said, you want to have those nice retirement benefits, etc. Maybe get another star before you retire. And you're not going to get any of that unless you let this drop. And he did. And what he said was, this program was protected by an SAP, Special Access Program. And even if you are in a need to know for at least part of that program, the SAP designation does not permit you to see it all. Only those things that you, in fact, may have something to contribute with. You know, part of the program. Nobody except a very, very few will ever know what it's all about. Now, with that being said, that convinced me that whatever this thing is, the bottom line, that we, okay, as the American public, will never know a damn thing about it.
Well, I got it. Because, going back over while you were talking, I was reminded that one of the things that freaked me out with what you were writing was how it seems like we've been slowly manipulated into a position of a police state. That a lot of the things that have been designated over the last 20 years would have been unheard of at the beginning of this whole thing. With intelligence and the control of citizens, putting us, under the Patriot Act, all of that. And, explain that to me, how this suddenly happened like this and maybe why it happened.
Well, why it happened is very apparent and transparent to me. It's about control, okay? Controlling the body politic is paramount to those in power. Today, and I don't mean to get political per se, but today we can see the fruits of that process by the divisiveness today in this nation. In the United States, everybody, and I do mean damn near everybody, is at each other's throats. Now, the latest example, of course, was the indictment and yesterday the arraignment of a former president of the United States. Something that has never happened in almost 2.5 centuries that this nation has been a sovereign nation. Nothing like this has ever happened. I mean, my God, even if you think back to the end of the American Civil War in 1865, the Confederate States of America, Abraham Lincoln, prior to his being murdered, his assassination, wanted to have basically a very gentle homecoming to the southern states that had succeeded, because they did not want this rancor that was horrible through 4 years of war to continue. I mean, look, in the history of the world, there have been a hell of a lot of wars. But the war that we fought here, we lost more troops, soldiers, thank God, not as nearly as many civilians, but more soldiers than we've lost in any other war we've ever been involved in. You think about the casualties in World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. They couldn't hold a candle to the damn near 700,000 people that were killed or died during the Civil War. So that was horrible. Lincoln wanted to alleviate that. He was murdered. Then his vice president, Andrew Johnson, tried to proceed down the same path, and he was impeached. They didn't succeed, but they brought impeachment against Andrew Johnson. So today is worse than at that point in history. And why? Well, Orange Man bad. That's about the long and the short of it. Okay? And today that has divided this country like it's never been divided damn near since the Civil War. So that's one way of keeping people in check. The other way is propaganda. Okay? The propaganda today and the news media, as I see it. Look, hey, these are my opinions. You don't have to agree with it, but this is what I've witnessed. And I've been around a while. I've watched this for a long time. And let me tell you what, I am discombobulated by what I witness on a day-to-day basis. The propaganda, I can't turn on local or national news and not cringe to the bottom of my soul, because I see the bias that is clearly demonstrated on a day-to-day basis. That's another. And the thing that irritates me to no end are how ignorant the largest majority of people are. Look, if you want to talk about loathing and despising somebody, right now we have a man occupying the Oval Office that has clearly spent his entire career on graft and enriching himself at the expense of the body politic. What basically transpired in the last several years with his son's laptop? Look at what the other side did to the then president of the United States, who was a Republican, lying and trying to get him driven from office by a totally trumped up, no pun intended, trumped up basically a hoax about Russian collusion and gallivanting around with Russian prostitutes that basically he had. You talk about disgusting. this is what the other side came up with, having the prostitutes allegedly urinate on the bed where an even other former president, Barack Obama, and his wife supposedly slept in on a trip to Russia. I don't want to get too off into the weeds with that stuff, but the lies were all pervasive. Nothing but lies. None of this is ever borne out. And if you look at the indictment right now that was brought against Trump by the Manhattan DA, it's basically void of content. There's nothing there. The big thing is he did bad bookkeeping. He lied about his bookkeeping. Okay. That's it. Now, and other crimes. What are the other crimes? And what did that DA say? Well, I don't really have to tell you. Okay. Which tells me, as a former cop, okay, that I dealt with this kind of bullshit on a regular basis when I was a working cop. This guy got nothing. Okay. It's strictly revenge and hating and loathing and political persecution in the United States.
It wouldn't have happened if he had retired. It wouldn't have happened if he had retired. This only came about because he's a threat in 2024. That's it. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. Many of my liberal friends agree. Yeah, that's what this is.
The question, okay, that arose is, how would this government control process operate? And I've just brought out a number of examples. And today, there is no such thing any longer, and have not been for years, about civil discourse. I like oranges. Well, I like apples. Well, yeah, apples are fine, but I prefer oranges. Fuck you. Fuck you and your oranges. That's today, okay? That is civil discourse.
Well, it gets so caught up in the shrubbery that it's not even apples and oranges. It's well, I like those little tiny oranges. Oh, those aren't good. You need the big oranges. Well, I prefer grapefruit. You got that one guy that's a libertarian. Grapefruit's better.
Yeah.
But I don't know. This is all kind of scary stuff when we start getting into it.
Well, my wife, and she is about as laid back as you can get. She wants nothing to do with any of this. Every once in a while, I have a temper tantrum about something, and she'll get on me like white on rice. She said, I just can't tolerate it when you get noisy. And I said, hey, it's the Army coming out. Well, you're not in the Army anymore. Yeah, well, once in, never out.
Never leave. You never leave the military. It's always
But
there.
She said yesterday, and I got to tell you, Gary, it scared me. We watched several news broadcasts about the aftermath of this arraignment. And she said, oh my God. She said, I don't see anything left except shooting. And when she said that to me, that scared me to death.
I've been talking about that for 3 years, that the minute blood was shed in American streets by Antifa, a war began. And whether people realize it or not, that this was American blood that was shed, and it's us versus the fascistic left, who likes to, because that's part of the game plan. If somebody calls you a fascist, call them fascist back. And that is part of their game book, is to call people what you are. Call other people what you are. What you're
have you noticed how racist has become way overused
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
hear
Words don't
anybody
mean
yelling
anything
racist
anymore. It's the
anymore.
left. My problem with the left is they use words. Some of my friends that do this shit, they'll go, well, he's a misogynist. I said, where in anything did he show hatred towards women? Well, I said, he's a sexist. That's okay. There's two different meanings between misogynist and sexist. There's a difference. And in order to get to misogynist, you require proof of hatred. You have to have hatred. Well, disrespect, that's not hatred. Hatred is a completely different word. And the example I've always used, Don, and I think you'll like this as a cop, I said, you go to Chicago and you do a Texas roll through on a stop sign because the tree is partially blocking that sign. Cop pulls you over, right? Starts to give you a ticket, and you're like, hey, man, I slowed down at the sign. I saw it last second. I slowed down. And the cop says, well, you didn't stop. You did a rolling stop. Yeah, but I almost stopped. You argue. And the cop says, yes, but you didn't stop, is the point. He says, yeah, but I mostly stopped. And he goes, yes, but you didn't fully stop. And the guy or you argue, well, fully stopping and mostly stopping, what's the difference? It's slowing down. He goes, here, step out of the car, sir. Guy steps out of the car. Please, place your hands on the hood of your car. Guy puts his hands on the hood of the car. He pulls out his nightstick, the cop, and starts wailing on the guy. And he says, now, do you want me to stop or do you want me to slow down?
He's got a point.
And I look at it that way. I really do see it that way, that people just don't understand the importance of words. I got into an argument with one of our good friends on Friday, and I said, the word you use is the wrong word. And he got mad at me. And I'm like, I can't help it. Words are important. That's how you convey thought. You don't want to give a partial thought. You want to give the full thought. So watch how you phrase things. And, but I do want to, we have ignored it, and I apologize, Mexican Iron Man. Here it is. I am convinced Bailey is a CIA spy planted to deter the important and vital work of UFO truth we need from Don. Kidding. Thanks for the show. That's a $10 super chat from our good friend, Mikey, Mexican Iron Man. For him, I'm going to, what video do I want to play for him? Have I not played one? I'm going to play this one. Yeah, I like this one.
I'd buy that for $1.
And let's see if I can get through these, because we don't have very much time. How much time do I got?
Very little.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Thanks.
About 2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes. Thank you, John. F you, Gary, from Andy Morrow. Bush McFadden with Biden was their first attempt to integrate an alien. I'm fucking doing this right in the middle of doing this, and you just fucking railroad me. Biden was their first attempt to integrate an alien in Earth society. As you can see, it isn't going well. I sum up Merck in a word: Fumafusa-fushafil. Che is here. Information about Phil Schneider is not easy to find nowadays. That's interesting. Of course, he throws up sons of bitches. And it was the Irish that escaped Earth before whiskey was invented. Yeah, Family Guy did a great take on that they were like advanced technologically. And then someone says, hey, I created this drink, try it. And it just completely destroyed Ireland. Love that hat, Gary. It's a fuel up. Yes, sir, Joe. Good to see you, my friend. And I'm always trolling. Let's see. This sounds like an old episode of the X-Files. So true, Slasher Fred. Chase says South Africa, China, India, Russia, and Brazil are developing new currency. Imagine that. Countries with socialist leanings.
1
Wonder
minute.
what that's about. Everyone in D.C. is trying to suckle at the power teat, or their regular miserable person. What's the difference? Half a dozen of one, 6 of the other. Sasha Fred says, if someone says the word pop at pop, do you want them to scream like that show's Pee-wee's Playhouse?
The word of the day.
Yeah, word of the day. Today it was the word dank because you brought up the swamp. So I said today's word is dank. Let's see. It's an alien. Quick, sneak out the back door. Oh, he got the back door reference in. PCM, the channel with misbehaving pets. It's true. We have Rocket Kitty and Bailey. And I created something just for Bailey, Don. Here we go. Boom. Bailey is a government stooge. Designated code name Ecker Interrupter.
Well, we've got to take that dank break now.
Oh, is it time? Oh, man. I'll finish the chat when we get back. Anyway, this will be a short message. We'll be right back, guys. Hi, guys. This is Gerry from Pop Culture Minefield here on KGRA, and we're leaving for our first break. I hope we survive.
Did you know 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated? If you struggle with focus, run low on energy, or when it's time to finally sleep, you simply can't, this can all be linked to dehydration, and Fuel Up has the answer. Our proprietary formula contains the finest cellular hydration with the strongest immune-enhancing natural ingredients. The Fuel Up system is made up of 3 different incredibly tasting varieties. Wake kickstarts your day with a jolt of caffeine. Play boosts focus while hydrating your cells. Rest not only helps you relax, but also rejuvenates your cells while you sleep. Here's what our clients have to say.
I really don't miss my coffee, and you can tell the difference.
So I'm going to take it for the energy. I'm going to take it for the play. I'm going to take it, all day.
And it works. That's the thing. It works. We love it.
Take the Fuel Up Challenge now, where we offer a Feel the Difference money-back guarantee. Fuel Up for life.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Oh, wow. We survived. Welcome back to the commercial break. Now for some more Pop Culture Minefield on KGRA. KGRA! So dumb. Hey, I wanted to throw this up here real quick. Bill Clinton paid Paula Jones $850,000 to go away. I don't remember the FBI raiding his lawyer's office. Just a reminder. It is a tit for tat. The Democratic Party did threaten after Clinton's impeachment that they would get us back. And that's really what a lot of the Trump stuff was about.
Well, here is the scary part. They have many. Now, look, let me set this up. I can remember back in the 60s when, especially when Nixon was running for president in 68. I can remember, and I was in college then. I can remember coming home and asking, my old man, I said, it's funny. I said, Republicans don't seem to have the guts or the fire in the belly that Democrats have when it comes to this political street fighting. Why is that? And he didn't have any good answer. And that's been true for most of the last 50 years. But with what just happened, they have managed to enrage a lot of Republican lawmakers. And I would not be surprised if suddenly throughout the United States, places with Republican majorities are going to begin doing the same thing to Democrats that the Democrats just did with Trump. And you're going to see this become a very messy affair, Gerry.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I
tit
totally
for
do.
Tat. Tit for tat.
This is the warnings that we have received all the way back to Ben Franklin about here's your liberty, good luck keeping it. This country is not a democracy. We have never been a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. We vote for people. We elect people to be the voices for us in the running of the government. But the government has superseded and has come to the point where it believes that it empowers us, that we aren't born with our rights. They give us our rights. And this is my problem with so many people. We know them. We have them in our lives. They become complacent.
Well,
they just want to go on about their lives and roll their balls of shit.
The apathy among the body politic.
Apathy is a great word for that.
Horror. It's a horror. And basically what you're seeing is people that don't feel like they have any skin in the game. Okay. Now here's the dirty bottom line that everybody has forgotten. All those people in Congress, the Congress people, the senators, they're not there as a ruling class. They are there to represent my Citizen Ecker's interests. Okay.
Yep.
That's what these people have forgotten. They think they are there. They're the new incarnation of the royal elite. They're not. They're servants. Okay. But the only way
they're overpaid accountants is really what they are.
Yeah. The only way they're going to learn that is when, enough people get fed up with enough of this crap and begin voting them out. Okay.
That's just it. They've forgotten the definition of constituent. They don't really, it's a word to them. We were just talking about that before the commercial break. Words have meaning, but people use them and misuse them so much. And this is where we've seen this in the last 25 years, where we've seen a shift in the definition and acceptance of non-words and the definition of words changing. And it's very frustrating to see this because it has nothing to do with an actual shift in the definition. It is the shift in the way people want that word perceived. It's perception.
Perfect example of that is the word racist. They completely rewrote it in real time because you looked it up one day on the Webster's online, and it said one thing, and now it specifically says you've got to have power to be racist.
Well, they have done it 3 times. The second time was with orientation.
Yeah.
The third one, it was, I think, last week with vengeance. And you know why.
Yeah.
But let me get back to the chat here. We got to get through some of these starred comments. We got someone is getting too close to Bailey's Pebbles. I'm assuming that means kibble and bits.
No, that's the rock she picks up.
My dog perked up when she heard. Yeah, she heard your dog barking. Don, his dog perked up. Human.
She's my honey trap, Bailey. She's my honey trap.
Your honey trap. Amelia used to floof when she heard Bailey at first. She's used to it now and ignores it. Are they still making incursions with the same ease? That's from Fishbelly. Good morning, Fishbelly. Let's see. Sap, like Gary's back again with the back doors. We got 2 breaches today. Biff Tannen by Monkey Jeebus. Monkey's been quiet today. We got 2 monkeys in the house, though, because we also have War Monkey in the house. 30 minutes Eckerant, or Eckerant, if I pronounce that correctly. Re-entry would be great. Time to drop acid. Oh, it's a great time to drop acid. What's all this flames? It's so beautiful. I thought every other war combined. And he's referring to when you said all the deaths from Civil War. And the problem was it was Americans killing Americans. So all you had was American casualties.
Just as a side note, during the Confederate cannonade of the Union position just prior to Pickett's charge, the Confederates had well over 100 artillery pieces, and they were all shooting at once. They could hear that in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Think about that.
It was crazy.
All the way to Philly.
And, just to point out, historically, they were winning the war. The South was winning the war until Gettysburg. And Lee made the big mistake that Jackson had advised him to never take the war north. Keep it at the border of Virginia and south, and we'll keep winning. But then Jackson, of course, was out of the equation, and Lee made that mistake. What's that?
He was dead.
Well, yeah. And it sort of happens sometimes.
Well, Lee's other problem, was he began to believe his own press. All right. Now, looking at it, and I was never a general. I was not an officer. I was an NCO. But I've been to Gettysburg. I've been up on the Union Ridge. I've looked down across that, I'm going to call it a valley, a mile across, filled with Confederate troops marching directly into the Union guns. And Lee thought he could win. And Longstreet told him, General, no army in history could make it up there. And Lee said, we're going. Well, what happened? It was carnage. And after that, the high water mark of the Confederacy had been reached. It was over. Now it was simply a war of attrition.
And in the end, what needs to be on every person's mind is a lot of people are like, oh, no way that can happen in this country again. It's been that acrimonious since 2001 in this country, and it's gotten worse and worse every freaking year. And blood has been shed in the United States over this shit. And if you don't think that there's going to come a tipping point when certain people in this country get sick and tired of shit, you bet, and this is one of the reasons why we're concerned with AI.
Let's just look at it
that the military goes AI, that suddenly robotic soldiers won't say no to killing Americans.
Let's just look at it economically, Now, regardless of what your personal feelings are about Donald Trump, Trump has an extremely abrasive personality. Yes, he has an ego. Yes, he doesn't know when to shut his mouth. But with that being said, we had $2.25 gasoline a gallon. All right. We had a dozen eggs for like 99 cents. We had a loaf of bread for $1. All right. What are those prices now? You could go out and get a nice T-bone steak for $5.79. Not anymore. Vicky and I split a ribeye steak over the weekend. And when she brought that home, I looked at it. It was $12 for a pound ribeye steak. $12. Now, that's pretty damned expensive, I'd say, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Inflation. 3 or 4 years ago, I could have sold this house that we're living in for damn near $800,000. I bought it in '94 for about $225. today, with inflation and everything else, I'd be lucky damn near to break even. Okay. The housing prices are just going to shit. So right now, hey, the last 2 years under this current administration, the economic health of the United States has gone into the toilet. Now, you can blame that on whatever you want, but I blame it on excessive government spending. Okay, excessive. I mean, we just cleared another $2 billion to send to the Ukraine. Gary,
Oh, yeah.
What are
No.
your
We
interests?
can't mention that. We can't talk about it. YouTube will gank us. They'll pull us right off.
Look at my
I'm
face.
serious, man. I want to talk about it so bad. And
Yeah.
we can't mention them.
A lot
Google
of it
has made that a fucking commandment. And they're scumbags for it. I can
They're
call
commies,
Google
goddamn.
scumbags for it and
They're
not get
commies.
ganked. Sure they are. Back up here, Bush says we think he committed a crime. Parenthetical statement, that can't be proven. So he could commit another crime. Parenthetical statement, unnamed. That's the indictment. And it is, Bush. You're absolutely right. This is a dog and pony show to do damage to him, and it's going to fail. It's going to fail. It'll blow up in their face again. Every single time they do this, it blows up in their face. And I don't understand why they keep going to this. What is that called, John? When you keep trying the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome, what's that called?
stupidity.
Insanity.
Thank you.
Insanity.
Insanity.
Yeah.
What Don said. Insanity.
It's stupidity too.
It is stupid, but it's a proof of insanity that you're
Yeah.
expecting a different outcome. Let's see. John knows things. If anima can't guide us, we are lost. It's true. Gettysburg took place, and this is from Fishbelly, took place close to election. If he could have dug in, it may have changed the election. If there's another civil war, where there be rules of engagement, as long as there is an active popular media, the media is what changed how wars are fought because their coverage. We allow them to embed. We allow them too much freedom to cover the war. And in doing so, we curb how we fight that war. There was a time Tecumseh Sherman burnt Atlanta, set fire to it, because they were the ones that were funding the Civil War. And he says, I'm going to teach you a lesson here real quick. This is what war looks like when it hits your doorstep. Stop putting your money into this war. And it fixed it. We bombed Dresden. We dropped 2 atomic bombs in Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The war was supposedly over, but Don knows as well as I do as a history guy, that war wasn't over. They were actually starting to do some shit up in the mountains in Japan to lengthen the war up to 2 more years, potentially. And MacArthur and all the generals and the Joint Chiefs of Staff came to the conclusion that millions of lives will be lost if we have to go into Japan.
You know, after Tarawa and Iwo Jima, and then especially Okinawa, nobody knew that we had the A-bomb. Nobody knew that yet. It was still ultra top secret. Nobody even had a conception that there might be a super bomb in the wings. They were talking about when we have to invade Japan. And they started discussing the use of chemical weapons after they saw the carnage.
That's shocking.
Yes, chemical weapons. Now, even the Nazis didn't employ or deploy chemical weapons fighting the Allies or the Russians. And the Russians, if there was anybody they'd have used chemicals on, it would have been the Russians. They didn't. But suddenly, we knew we had to do something.
There was a real fear of what Japan was doing because they were stockpiling weapons in the mountains. They were digging into the mountains, these caves where they could launch planes out of the caves. They kept going, we were going, are you going to sign the treaty, the surrender? Yeah. We'll get back to you, is what they were doing. Emperor Hirohito. And Harry Truman's like, okay, enough of this shit. They're just trying to prolong this so they can hunker down and set up the long battle there in Japan. I'm going to stop this. And he gave the order. He says, because he knew millions of lives would be lost fighting in Japan. He knew it because of Okinawa, Tarawa, and Iwo Jima. That showed us what we were up for if we went into Japan.
And these history revisionists today that say, oh, we didn't have to use the A-bomb. That was just pure murder. Japan was ready to surrender. Well, these people know no more about warfare than they probably know about their own butthole, okay? It just simply isn't true.
I suspect they spend a lot of time, though, looking at their buttholes. By the way, Dadman
body-length mirror.
Body-length mirror. Dadman Walking is here. How you doing, man? Long time no see. It's good to see you, man. Let's see. We got, Bush saying we had $1.50 a gallon for about a year. It's true. And I always thought it was interesting that the price of gas and the price of milk always seem to fluctuate the same. I always thought that was odd. Only the government can cause inflation. The administration says it's we the people causing inflation. I love that. The only thing that the left has managed to prove is that Donald J. Trump is the cleanest president we've ever had. I don't know what that means. Let's see. Oh, the Summer of Love had media covering it well. Yeah. The media is the reason why wars aren't fought the way they used to be, because there's a fear of public backlash. And,
well, God forbid if anything ever happens again in this country where the right and the left square off against each other. Buster, there won't be no rules.
Yeah, no rules of engagement. It'll be
except the rules of the jungle.
Last one standing, or as James Bond said, last rat standing. In what was that? Skyfall, whatever that movie was called. See, firebombing caused a lot of damage to many strategic locations too. Oh, there's no doubt about that. But the fact is they didn't care if it did damage to the civilian, because they're like, hey, you're letting this happen. This is the same mindset when you hear about rocket hits a building where Hezbollah or one of those organizations is hunkered down firing their rockets from. That building gets destroyed and all the citizens in that building get killed with it. And the media immediately plays into that, going, well, you killed all these civilians. Well, the civilians were in a building where the enemy was. They should have removed themselves. Well, if they couldn't remove themselves, whose fault is it? But the media plays that. It's all about popularity. It's all about boo-hoo. And when you're dealing with bad guys, that shield themselves with innocent people, or believed to be innocent people. There's no proof. Children are the only ones we know that are innocent. And what do they call that in warfare? That when innocent people get killed in conflict, it's part of the fog of war.
Collateral damage.
Collateral damage. And nobody likes it. Nobody likes it. Your average foot soldier who's had to kill people in between them and the enemy, it's happened. They carry that shit for their life. But the media has this way of trying to use this. And one of the most, I'm blown away that I'm saying this, because I'm such a proponent for what Ben Franklin was trying to do with this country, with the media, with the press. But the press has become one of the single most destructive forces in this country. Our journalists, our news, very destructive. It is between journalism and politicians. that your country is being run. It's no longer run by you, the people, us, the average person that votes. We want our votes to count. We want our votes to work. People don't understand how the Electoral College prevents massive cities that are populated by specific political groups from deciding an election. The Electoral College is there to protect you from that. Whether you like it or not, it's there for that reason.
You know, this past weekend, excuse me, I binged, okay, Generation Kill. And
you told me, and what did you think?
It was fascinating. The first thing, the Rolling Stone journalist that was embedded with that Marine platoon, you know, it blew me away. I laughed and giggled at that because, hey, reporter, oh, did you bring any dope with you? You know, it's Rolling Stone, yeah. Well, I used to write for Hustler magazine. What? You wrote for Hustler? What'd you? You know, what was it? Pussy Hunt or something? You know? God.
I got a buddy that was a veteran of the battle from Missoula, Colby Bazell, and he went on to. I think he works for either Penthouse or Hustler. He's their combat journalist. Goes overseas, and it's something that he's good at. He's good at doing it. But I respect some of those journalists over Hustler. I do. But that show was really good. A friend of mine's in it. He plays the Marine major, and I like that show. I like the book. I read the book before I saw the show. I remember one of my favorite things was mentioning bug juice. So you didn't deal with bug juice. That was something that was given to us in our MREs. And bug juice is Army Kool-Aid. And it's got so much sugar in it, it's ridiculous. And it looks so gross. It doesn't look like Kool-Aid should look. Because those are 3,000 calorie meals, you know. Mm-hmm. And so the Kool-Aid is just this, and you put it in your canteen, you shake it up, but if you pour it and look at it, it just looks so disgusting. And we called it bug juice. And they mentioned it in the book, and I was like, they brought that up. That's so gross.
Yeah, when you said bug juice, I immediately thought of the actual bug juice we had in Vietnam. Okay. The anti-insect repellent.
Oh, was it DDT or some shit like that?
Oh, yeah, some crap. But I'll tell you what, it was great on leeches. You'd sprinkle a little of that on a leech that had attached themselves to you, and it was better than burning them off with a cigarette. And of course, in those days, everybody smoked. Okay, I smoked, everybody smoked. And there was nothing, and I've said this in a couple of inappropriate places, but nothing was more enjoyable than lighting up a Marlboro, immediately surviving a mortar attack. Okay. The mortars.
Is it like after sex? Is it like after
damn
sex?
Near. Damn near.
Chase says, how does Don feel about no more yelling at recruits in the U.S. Army?
Well, it still creeps out, Kev. Let me tell you what. There are times when it creeps out.
Yeah. If there's time, John Ostains asks, could Don comment on if there isn't now or ever has been at least one politician who is true to disclosure? Representative Stephen Schiff of New Mexico, who I heard on Don's show, seemed legit.
Yeah. This was back in the mid 90s. Schiff was basically, okay, let me give a little background. This was prior to the 50th anniversary of Roswell. And a lot of people were gearing up for that. And one of the things that came to light was the fact that, remember now, In those days, it was not the Air Force. It was the Army Air Corps, all right, who basically had the Roswell base. The 509th Atomic Bomb Wing, okay, was at Walker Field in New Mexico. So when the Air Force, now it's the Air Force, did a search for records, communication records from the 509th during that time period, this was one of the things that the GAO, the Government Accounting Office, had been tasked to search for records. Well, there was a 3-year time span where the records, which by federal law and statute had to be there, were gone. They disappeared. Okay. Nobody knew nothing. Nobody knew nothing about that. Where did those records go? I don't know. That's been a long time ago, man. You know, well, somebody went in and removed those records because those records would have shown that something with a very high degree of strangeness happened in the end of June, first part of July 47. So Schiff went in there and was doing a little nosing around. And at the time, it was a big deal. So I called Schiff's office and basically asked him if he would come on my show and talk about that. He did. Okay. And the guy was pretty straight up and forward. I've got that show recorded and digital, okay, which is very interesting. I don't even know if we could do something like play that on this show, could we? Gerry?
As far as the interview?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we could.
Well, that might be very.
We could actually, intersperse with commentary. Pause it, talk about what was just talked about, and then do it. How long is the interview? About an hour?
Well, I mean, this is a 2-hour show. Yeah. We do it in an hour, definitely. But
yeah, see, we
anyway,
we'll spread it over 2 hours. It'd be fun. Yeah.
Now there was some other strangeness about that time period. Schiff's wife, Schiff, was working in his office, but had connections to another guy who was in the UFO field at the time, who was a former undersecretary of state. Okay. Now, all these people now today are dead. Schiff died of cancer. Carl Flock, the other guy that I was talking about, has since passed on, wrote a book. He was former CIA. Carl Flock had been former CIA. And I interviewed him, as a matter of fact, in, let me see, in about 95. And during that interview with Flock, I had a guy call me up that turned out to be, well, this is another big, long story, but I ended up calling this guy an asshole. Okay. Now, this was over the air radio, and it just so happened that the guy that owned the station happened to be on site when I called this character an asshole, and he stopped and he turned around and he yelled, "Hey, did he just call somebody an asshole?" Suddenly the place blew up. Well, then he chewed my ass after the show about that. So I said, okay. And then the guy that I called an asshole started faxing the station office fax. and used up a whole roll of paper, raging and carrying on. So the next week, I was still a little steamed about this. And when I went in, and I made a couple of public announcements on the show, I said, look, whatever you do not call our fax machine at area code 818-555-1010 or whatever the number was, right? And of course, everybody did. And I did that twice. And I could see my time was going to be limited there.
I'm probably going to get fired one day for this shit. So, by the way, it was asked a minute ago by Che. He's wanting to know when they took out cigarettes from MREs, and they never had cigarettes in MREs. In fact, after World War II, they weren't included in any rations. But if you got rations that were from World War II, C rations, you might get ones with cigarettes in them.
Vietnam.
Did
they? Had them in Vietnam. Every C
But that was still C rations, though, from World War II. Yeah.
Well, they weren't 25 years old at the time.
Are you sure?
They were new. Am I sure? Yeah, of course I'm sure. Damn phone. Okay. Yeah, of course I'm sure. Yeah,
like I got a C ration once that the Hershey bar that was in it was had wormholes in it, but no worms. It's like, and I don't know where they went. The package was never broken. And and
no, those were brand new C rations in Vietnam.
Then I stand corrected, but it was still C rations. C rations were the ones that had cigarettes in them.
By the way, I hated Pall Malls. Some had.
Is that what they put in them?
Well, Chesterfield's, Pall Malls, Lucky Strikes, Marlboros.
Yeah, I heard
Marlboros
about Lucky Strikes from my dad. Yeah. My dad was a Camel guy, and he hated having to smoke Lucky Strikes out in the field. I love hearing about black market currency behind the wall. Nylons and chocolates and stuff like that. Yeah, man. Cigarettes was currency. Like Anima mentioned that. I think I saw that. Yep. Anima. In the immortal words of Don Ecker, tough shit. Tough shit, because it's all interconnected whether you like it or not. She's one of those apolitical people that will let the world fall apart around her and she'll just go along. And I love her. But she gets frustrated by things, but doesn't want to get involved in the discussion of how to fix it.
Now, in Vietnam, American currency could get you busted. Okay, greenbacks. You could not have any American currency over there.
Right.
So, as a result, you had MPCs. Okay. They basically created our own currency for in-country called military payment certificates, MPCs. And that also included change. Okay. You'd have MPCs for quarters, dimes, nickels, whatever. Right. Now, after a while, the Vietnamese would catch on to that, and they had some great forgers. So what they would do would be change the MPCs, have a whole new kind. You'd have X amount of time to get rid of your old MPCs and get the new ones, all right? Exchange them one for one. But after a certain cutoff date, if you had your old MPCs, you didn't change them out, tough shit. Well, so when these things would come up, the Vietnamese would get all weirded out about that. They get crazy. So some industrious GIs basically bought a number of Monopoly games with Monopoly money. They basically started passing them out as a new
Oh my God! Really?
Yes.
Did they say it's Canadian money? Because I make fun of Canadian money because it looks like Monopoly money.
No, but they passed that off for a week or two.
That's funny. That's messed up, man.
Yeah, that GIs, dude. GIs always thought they were getting screwed over there anyway. So why not? We'll just do a little screwing.
Any chance
back.
they get to screw somebody over, they would jump at it. Yeah. Vinkman's Girl is here, Peter Vinkman's fan site, and Dragon Ruse is in the house. Greetings. So we could venture back over because there are a couple of things that were mentioned in that article that I would like to talk about before we end the show, which was you started going into the stuff with Swan, where Swan suggested to Dr. Puthoff and Russell Targ expanding the remote viewing beyond the confines of a laboratory to more distant targets. And then you brought up the whole thing dealing with what planet was it?
Saturn
or Jupiter. Jupiter was mentioned. Swan was initially rebuffed, but when he threatened to resign and leave, they relented. NASA had already launched 2 probes, Pioneer 10 and 11, which would send back telemetry in September of 73. Swan's test took place in April of 73, and as it turned out, this remote viewing of Jupiter was an outstanding success when the telemetry was finally received. What are you talking about there?
Well, for example, Jupiter has very faint rings.
Yep.
Okay. They have rings, not rings like Saturn, but they have rings. They're almost indistinguishable for the human eye, but he saw them. He gave them detailed information on the Great Red Spot and a number of other things. And they knew that when they got this telemetry back from the 2 probes that were out there. So he was vindicated. Now, Ingo was loath to remotely view anything, okay, where he knew he would never receive feedback, okay?
Right.
Now, when he remotely viewed the moon for that character Axelrod and whoever the hell those guys were, all right, he told them up front after he knew what he was remotely viewing that, well, how am I ever going to get feedback about this? And they said, well, sooner or later, feedback will be coming. And so he said, all right.
Feedback, what does feedback mean? Meaning that he sees something or something responds?
He sees something.
He sees something.
And then it's verified through other means and sources.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And one day, this is several years later, he gets an unmarked package in the mail. And he takes it home, he opens it up, and inside is George Leonard's book, Somebody Else is on the Moon. And there were photographs in there, in the book. And I've got a paperback copy of it. And that was Swan's feedback for that remote viewing session he did for Axelrod and those guys. So, yeah. So that's the only way he ever wanted to do anything. He said, look, if there's no chance of me knowing if I were right or wrong, then I'm not going to do it.
I'm not going to do it. Yeah, I get that. So he always wanted to get that report back from any telemetry, etc. I get it. So, and let's see, there was something else that I saw in there that, because like the police state thing freaked me out. That was interesting. You brought up NIDS in here. Journalist Billy Cox, futurist and occasional rogue journalist Gary Beckham. I'm trying to remember what this was about. because you bring up the DIA a lot in this article. Is this an essay or an article?
I call it an op-ed piece.
Just an op-ed. Okay.
Or
short,
my position paper, however you want to describe it, is cool.
All right, so I'm going to read this right out loud. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. As I write this paper, once again, the subject of UFOs has exploded across the USA, especially social media. Two items have rejuvenated interest in UFO paranormal PSI arenas of late. The History Channel series Unidentified and the release of notes from an alleged meeting between Eric Davis, formerly of the National Institute of Discovery Science, INIDS, founded and operated by Robert Bigelow, who I think is absolutely at the core of a lot of stuff right now. And Admiral Thomas R. Wilson, former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, taking an overhead view of the material. Many names are apparently involved, and it's a very complex situation. Prominent is Dr. Edgar Mitchell, astronaut and the sixth man to walk on the moon, along with journalist Billy Cox, futurist and occasional rogue journalist Gary Beckham. Wilson and Davis. Other prominent individuals include UFO researcher Grant Cameron and attorney Michael Hall, who had released the Davis-Wilson notes that Davis alleged made during a covert meeting he had with Admiral Thomas R. Wilson, which occurred in the parking lot of the Las Vegas headquarters of EG&G on October 16, 2002. Also mentioned a retired naval officer, Oak Shannon, because you mentioned this before, references, Will Miller. The notes indicate that in April of 1997, Stephen Greer, Miller, and Edgar Mitchell gave a talk in the Pentagon conference room to a number of military officers, including Admiral Mike Crawford and General Pat Hughes. The shortened version had Mitchell meeting Admiral Thomas Wilson, who at the time headed up the DIA. Again, DIA is in here. According to Mitchell, Wilson told him he would attempt to follow up with his contacts within the Pentagon, and allegedly his inquiries led to the Aviation Corporation in the state of California. Wilson is reported to have called them, but they refused to discuss anything over the telephone line. Why? Because they're afraid of CIA listening in or
Eavesdropping,
others.
whoever.
Just any eavesdropping.
Phone, look, NSA has the ability to tap into every electronic communication today. Right now, somebody's listening to us right here.
Okay? Oh, I'm sure of it.
Every time this freaking phone rings, they have the potential to tune into that. Cell phones, even worse, okay?
But here's the thing. In your parenthetical statement, it says, it was implied that this unnamed corporation had recovered technology they were studying. And I believe that's Bigelow, and I believe that has a lot to do with Skinwalker Ranch. Because something's under the ground there. And the material doesn't make sense. This is material underneath that freaking closed up mountain that he closed up. He closed those caves. That material is made from the same material that's used on re-entry ships. What's that doing under that friggin' mountain? I really do think that Bigelow's right at the center of all of this.
Well, he's got his nose buried deeply in somebody's butthole. Yeah.
Definitely. And what I thought was odd is that he sold that property. I thought for sure he would be told to keep it. What do you think about that? Why would he sell that property?
Maybe this is speculation. I got no inside track, but maybe he thought he got everything out of there worth getting.
Or maybe the sale was to an approved person that they approved.
Yeah, but that person's paying to have that place researched.
Well, are they? Or Was this possibly a way to make a quick buck on some oddities that have been discovered out there? You know, the legend of Skinwalker Ranch goes back centuries. The
Right.
Native Americans that inhabited that area
Hey, Dragon Roost.
considered that area cursed. They wouldn't even go on the land. Okay.
Right.
And you hear some very weird stories, but I got to the point where, unless I saw it, I handled all of that with skepticism. Now, John Brandenburg, okay, who's been a guest on this show a number of times. John and I have been buddies for a long time, for over 30 years. And he basically called me up one day, very excited, to tell me that that guy that was on the Skinwalker show, what's his name? Taylor?
Travis.
Travis.
Yeah.
Travis. Yeah. Okay. Had been irradiated out there on the Skinwalker Ranch. And I said, what? He said they were out stomping around somewhere. They came to this what the hell was it? Something buried in the ground. It was like a manhole cover. And they lifted it up, and basically it turned out to be some kind of radiation.
Oh, that was a cistern behind the old house.
Yeah, it's the cistern behind one of the abandoned houses on the property.
Well, make a long story short, it initially apparently really affected him, according to John. And I said, well, affected him how? And he said, well, he's been pissing blood. And I said, oh my God. So I kept in touch with John about that to find out if there were any other ill effects. And then he said, hey, he said, how would you like to interview him? And I said, oh God, yeah. As a matter of fact, I had asked him. I said, do you think he would do it? So John called him up and he said, sure, just have him get in touch with me. He gave me a phone number and an email address. And I called him, left a message. Then I sent him an email. Never heard back from him. It went about a week. So I wrote him again and didn't hear back from him. So I called John up and I said, hey, I've been trying to get in touch with Travis. I've called him. I've emailed him. How about you doing a little checking? And later he got back to me. He said, yeah. He said, I told him you've been trying to get in touch with him. And he said he'd write you. Well, he never did. Okay.
Yeah, because I've wanted to get him on here for a while. I love that guy. So
but the only thing I can come up with, the only thing that makes sense to me, my name is pretty well known. Okay. And my basic attitude is pretty hardcore, and people know that. And I think he must have been intimidated or something, or afraid that I would ask him some inconvenient questions. And he wanted to avoid that because I tried to get out to Skinwalker Ranch. I went to George Knapp. Okay, right after he and Colin Kellener's book came out that they wrote about Skinwalker, Vicky and I drove over to Las Vegas, had dinner with George one night, and I basically did everything except get on my hands and knees, asking George to intervene with Bigelow so I could go out there and spend a couple of days. And Bigelow refused me. All right. He refused me. So I was very curious about the Skinwalker Ranch. So I had some pretty pointed questions to ask this guy, but he avoided me. So that's all I can figure out, Gary.
That sucks because I really like Travis and you know, gosh, I've wanted to get him on. I want to get George Knapp on sometime because I like him too. He's freaking cool. But that's for another day. We're nearing the end of the show here. We got some more comments. I guess I'll read real quick here. We got George Leonard's famous book was one of the earliest intros of UFOs. Or to UFOs. I'd bring a magnifying glass to my grade school library, check out the blurry pics. I did the same thing, man. I didn't bring one. I would ask the teacher for her or librarian for theirs, depending on where I was reading. Let's see. Skinwalker, Texas Skin Ranger. Chuck Norris would be the alien. Again, with the back door, I guess I'll play some backdoor videos before we go. I believe Bigelow's interest in UFOs, consciousness, and skinwalker is connected to the death of his boy. What do you think about that, Don?
I was interviewed for a television show, and it was all on Bigelow, okay? We knew the producer very well because she used to be a managing editor at UFO Magazine before she broke into TV. Renee Barnett, who's on KGRA, by the way. And I did a lot of background on Bigelow on that show. And basically, it went back to when he was a kid, all right, somebody in his family had a rather dramatic UFO encounter, and it came forward, and he had been fascinated with the idea of getting his hands on alien tech. And that's been his raison d'etre ever since, okay? He has been hot on the trail of UFO, and I'm sure it has to do with his Bigelow Aerospace Company. At one point, he was basically designing and getting ready to launch. Are you ready for this? In case you haven't heard it before, hotels in space.
Yeah, I heard about that.
You could go up, where you could go up in orbit and book a few days, a week, or whatever this was, in one of his floating hotels. But I don't know what has since transpired with that. But the guy's got.
They're still working on commercial space travel. They're still working on it, Don. I've got to play 3 quick videos and then we got to wrap. Let's see. Here's one.
I'm gonna go check the back door.
Yeah, that's that one.
Go! Use the back door. I'll stall.
There's that one. Here's a new one.
Maybe we only need like 3 stink bombs. You better give me the other ones.
Okay, I drop these 3 stink bombs, smell out the joint, and slip out the back door.
There we go. and that's it. You got 3. Don, thanks a lot, man. I want to thank everybody that was here, starting with Andy Morrow, Penny, Fishbelly, Anima Confusa, Boosh, McFadden, Cavatino Cavalryman Che, John Ostains, John, get with me after the show, Real Wade Nation, Alex Moore, Monkey Jibas, thank you, come again, Slasher Fred, Mexican Iron Man, and thank you again for the $10 super chat. Grandmaster UV, Dadman Walking, Peter Vinkman Fansite, Dragon Ruse, and that's it. Everybody has been mentioned, and thank you so much for watching today. That was a fun show, man. I enjoyed it. It went by too fast. I guess take us out. See you guys later.
Those sons of bitches.
Ma, I'm doing a show.
Don't forget, we'll be back in a few hours.